UniFi Firewall Rules. If you want to find out how to stop VLANs communicating with each other and also to set up a device to allow communication to all VLANs, then keep watching this video and I'll show you how. Hi, thanks for watching. In this video we're going to be setting up firewall rules to block inter-VLAN communications, but we're going to be allowing traffic from my main network to communicate with devices on all of the VLANs as well. So if you watched my previous video, I set up various VLANs. I'll put a link in the description for this video so that you can watch this video first if you want to before you watch this one. However, from the diagram on screen at the moment, you'll see that in the center squares there's a coloured box for home automation VLAN, which is orange, security VLAN, which is light blue, smartphones and tablets VLAN, which is yellow, and then we have the main network, which is red, and also the other final fourth VLAN is a multimedia VLAN. Now what we're going to be doing is blocking each of these VLANs so that they cannot communicate with other VLANs and also cannot communicate with the main network, with one exception, in that we want to allow the multimedia VLAN to be able to access the main NAS on the main network, because we have streaming media which is stored on the main NAS and which we need to stream to the TV. So we'll be adding an additional rule to allow the main NAS on the main network to communicate with the multimedia VLAN so that we can stream music and media files to the TV. We'll also be creating another rule to allow the main network devices to access the VLANs. However, but the VLANs will not be able to access the main network. So it will be a one-way communication. So let's get started. So the first thing you need to do is to log in to your UniFi OS, as you can see I have done on the screen at the moment. And from there you need to select the dotted square icon in the top right corner. Then from the drop-down menu you need to select network. Once you're in the network screen, you'll see that you'll be presented with your UniFi network dashboard. Now from that you need to select the settings, which is the cog or the gear icon on the left hand side, and it's at the bottom of the list, and you can see I'm hovering over it now, and this is for settings. So select this. Then from the additional menu options you will see at the left hand side we have Wi-Fi, networks, internet, teleport and VPN, traffic management, firewall and security, profiles and system. Now the option you need to select is firewall and security. Then from the firewall and security screen, which you'll see at the moment, we need to first create a port IP group, and this is shown under Firewall Rules, and you'll see that it says create port IP group. So select this option, and then under the profile name we need to enter RFC 1918, as you'll see I've typed in on the screen at the moment. Then under the type you need to select IP4 address subnet, and then under the address box you need to enter 192.168.0.0/16. So to repeat, you should enter 192.168.0.0/16 and then click add. Then under the address section again you need to enter 172 172.16.0.0/12. To repeat, that's 172.16.0.0/12, and then click Add. Then under the address section again, you need to enter 10.0.0.0/8. So to repeat that, it is 10.0.0.0/8, and then click Add. So once you have those three IP address groups entered, you need to click Apply Changes. Then you'll see Successfully Saved RFC 1918 Port Group pop up. And under the profiles here, under IP groups, you should have RFC 1918 and IP for address stroke subnet, and the count should be 3. Now that you've done that, we need to select Firewall and Security again from the left hand side menu, and then under the list of firewall rules we need to select Create Entry, not Create Port IP Group, but select Create Entry. You should then be presented with a screen with various boxes and options to fill in. So the first type we need to select is not Internet In, but you need to change that to LAN In. And then under the description box, I would recommend typing your initials or something to refer to that, so you can see in the list easily that you know you have created this rule and it's not one created by your UniFi network automatically. So in this case I will put 10GT hyphen as the reference, so I can easily see that it's a rule that I've created myself. And then after that we need to type allow all established stroke related traffic. So that should be in the description, your reference or initials hyphen allow all established and related traffic. Then under the rule applied section we need to select that as before predefined rules, which you should see is already in there by default. Then under the action line we need to make sure that accept is marked, and as you can see it has a blue dot in accept. And then for the IPv4 protocol you will see that it's selected as default all. We can leave that as all, so we don't need to change that. And then scroll down slightly, and under the source section and for source type we need to select port IP group, which is selected by default. Under the IP for address group, that should be selected as default as any, and we need to leave that as it is. Under port group should also be selected as any by default, and we can leave that as any. Then scrolling down to destination, under the destination type you should see port IP group in there by default. We'll leave that as it is. And then under the IP for address group should be selected as any, and that is by default. And the port group is also any, and that should be shown as any by default. Then once you have entered the port group left as the default any, you need to, under advanced, you need to select manual, and then you need to tick the box for match state established and also match state related. Make sure you have a tick in box match state established and match state related. Note that match state new and match state invalid do not have ticks in those boxes, which is correct. So then click apply changes. Okay, so that is the first firewall rule created, and if you select from the firewall rules list LAN, as you'll see I'm hovering over here, you should see in the list at the top it should be rule index 2000, and under the description you should see 10GT or whichever initials you're using, and then allow all established stroke related traffic. So you can see that the first firewall rule we created has been applied and has been added to the list. So moving on to the second firewall rule, we need to scroll down to the list of firewall rules again and select create entry, which is here at the bottom of the list of firewall rules. Then from the next screen you should see new rule appear and various boxes again, and on this, for the type, we need to select LAN in, and then under the description we need to type in your initials again, and then a hyphen, and then allow main LAN to access all VLANs. Now this is what I was talking about earlier, and this is the rule that it will allow devices on the main network to allow access to devices on all of the VLANs, but when we are finished it will also stop devices on the VLANs communicating with devices on the main LAN, which is what we want. So moving on, under rule applied we need to select that as before predefined rules. Under the action we need to select accept, and this should be already selected by default. Then under the IPv4 protocol we need to select all. Then under the source, and for source type we need to select network. So change this from IP to network. Then under the network line, underneath that, where it says default, you need to select default, and that should be in there by default. So this is the actual default main LAN. If you've renamed your main network to something else, say if you've renamed it to main LAN, then you would select main LAN. But as my main LAN is still called default, I'm selecting default. Then under the network type you need to select IPv4 subnet, which should be selected by default, and then under MAC address you can leave that box blank. Moving down to the destination options, under destination type you need to select port/IP group, and that should already be selected by default. Then under the IPv4 address group you need to select RFC 1918. Now if you recall, we created a group earlier when we first started creating the rules, and we created an RFC 1918 IP address group. So this is what you should select in IPv4 address group, as RFC 1918. Then under the port group you can leave that selected as any, and then under advanced you can leave that selected as auto and click apply changes. Then if you go to the list of firewall rules again and select LAN, you will now see that there's two firewall rules created with our initials against them. First one should be 10GT allow all established related traffic, and the second one should be 10 GT allow main LAN to access all VLANs. So now the third firewall rule we need to create is to allow access to our NAS from VLANs. So under the list of firewall rules, which we have on screen at the moment, you need to select create entry again. So when you select create entry, you'll be taken to the new rule screen, and under type we need to select LAN in. Under description we need to enter our initials hyphen allow access to NAS from VLAN. Now what we are doing here is creating a rule to allow access to our NAS from our smart TV so that we can stream media from the NAS to the smart TV. So under the next section we need to select rule applied, and that will be before predefined rules, and under action it should be selected as accept, so you can leave that as accept. Under IPv4 protocol, by default that should be selected as all, so you can leave that as all. Then under the source section, and for source type we need to select network. Then under the network selection below source type, you need to select the Multi Media VLAN. As you will remember, the Multi Media VLAN contains my smart TV, so we need to allow access from the smart TV to the NAS. So under the network type we need to select IPv4 subnet, and then for destination, under destination type we need to select IP address. So under the IPv4 address section you need to enter 192.168.1.33. Now this is the static IP address for my NAS. Now obviously you will need to obtain your static IP address yourself from your NAS, and by going into the NAS settings, whether that's Synology or QNAP or whichever, you need to set a static IP address in your NAS and make a note of it so that you can enter it in the box here on your UniFi network controller. I cannot go into details on each manufacturer's NAS to set the static IP address, but if you go into the help section for your manufacturer, they should easily tell you how to set a static IP address on your NAS. Then once you have done that, click apply changes. Then for the list of firewall rules, if we select LAN again, you should see that there's now 3 firewall rules created. So now the fourth and final firewall rule we need to create. So within the list of firewall rules you need to select create entry again, and then for the type it needs to be selected as LAN in, and then under the description you need to enter again your initials hyphen block all inter VLAN communication. Now what this rule does is prevent your VLANs from communicating with each other and also from communicating with the main network. However, as we've just created a previous LAN rule, it will allow the main LAN to access VLANs and also for the VLAN to only access the NAS for the multimedia VLAN we created. What this will do is block all the VLANs communicating with each other. So under the section rule applied, we need to select after, not before predefined rules, but this rule applied we need to select after. so make sure you do select after. Under Action, we need to select Drop. So change this from Accept and mark it as Drop. Then under the IPv4 protocol, you need to select All, which is already selected by default, and then under the source options, for the source type, you need to select Port IP group, which is already selected by default. Then under the IPv4 address group, you need to select RFC 1918. So under the IPv4 address group, select RFC 19, and then under the port group, that should be selected as any by default, so you can leave that as any. Under the MAC address, leave that box empty, and for the destination section, under destination type, you need to select port IP group, and then under the IPv4 address group, you need to select RFC 1918 again, and then under the port group, it should be selected as any. Under Advanced, you should leave that as automatic, and then click Apply Changes. Then under the list of firewall rules, you should select LAN, and then you should now see that there's 4 sets of firewall rules. One with rule index 2000, 2001, 2002, and then 4000. So there should be 4 sets of firewall rules. The first one from top to bottom with the description 10GT, allow all established related traffic. Second one, 10GT, allow main LAN to access all VLANs. The third one, 10GT, allow access to NAS from VLAN. And then the fourth and final one is 10GT, block all inter-VLAN communication. So that completes setting up of the firewall rules. I hope you've found this video useful. Keep a lookout for further videos coming soon. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and also to hit the like button if you find this video useful. Thanks for watching and see you again soon.